The credit card reader beeped 3 times before displaying the message that made my stomach drop. Account holder deceased. July 15th, 1987. I looked up at the woman standing across from me. She wore a faded yellow sundress and had kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she smelled like vanilla and old books. Nothing about her seemed dead, especially not for 38 years. "Is there a problem, dear?" she asked, tilting her head. I stared at the screen again. The date was clear. July 15th, 1987. Today was July 15th, 2025. I'd been working at Murphy's rest stop for 3 years, and the credit card machine had never malfunctioned like this before. "Just a technical issue," I managed, forcing a smile. "Let me try running it again." The machine beeped 3 times. Same message. "You know what? Don't worry about it," I said, my voice coming out higher than normal. "It's on the house." She clasped her hands together. "How sweet of you, Rusty." She read my name tag and smiled wider. "You remind me of my grandson. He would have been about your age." Would have been. I watched her walk toward the door, her yellow dress swaying. She moved like any other customer. Normal footsteps, normal pace. But something cold settled in my chest as I realized I hadn't heard the electronic door chime when she'd entered. The chime that worked every single time, even when a fly buzzed through it. After she left, I called my manager, Marlene. "Marlene, the credit card reader is acting up. It's saying customers are dead." "Dead how?" "Like literally dead. Account holder deceased with dates from decades ago." Marlene was quiet for a moment. "Rusty, I need you to listen very carefully. Are you alone right now?" "Yeah, why?" "Lock the doors, both the front and the bathroom entrance. Don't let anyone else in until I get there." "What?" "Marlene, I can't lock customers out. It's the middle of the afternoon." "Rusty." Her voice was sharp now. "Lock the doors. Now." I'd never heard Marlene sound like that. She was usually laid back, the type of manager who let me take extra breaks and didn't care if I ate the expired sandwiches. But something in her voice made me move toward the front door. "Okay, I'm locking up now." "Good. I'll be there in 20 minutes. And Rusty, if anyone knocks or tries to get in, don't answer. Don't even look at them." The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, staring at the empty parking lot through the glass door. 2 semis were parked at the far end, their drivers probably sleeping. A few cars dotted the spaces near the building, but I couldn't see any people. 20 minutes felt like hours. I tried to busy myself restocking the coffee station, but my hands kept shaking. Every time I glanced at the door, I expected to see someone standing there, waiting to be let in. When Marlene finally arrived, she looked tired. More tired than I'd ever seen her. She was only 45, but today she looked older. Her usually perfect black hair was messy, and her makeup was smudged under her eyes. "Show me the register," she said, not bothering with hellos. I demonstrated the problem with my own credit card. 3 beeps. Account holder deceased, March 22nd, 2019. "That's impossible," I said. "I'm standing right here." Marlene closed her eyes. "How many customers today? Maybe 15? It's been slow." "How many paid cash?" I thought about it. Actually, all of them except the lady in the yellow dress. "Describe her." I told Marlene everything I could remember. The vanilla smell, the neat bun, the way she'd mentioned her grandson. Marlene's face grew paler with each detail. "Rusty, I need to tell you something about this place. Something I should have told you when you started working here." She sat down on the stool behind the counter. "There are rules. 4 rules that keep this place running safely." "What kind of rules?" "The kind that keep the living and the dead from mixing too much." She looked at me seriously. Murphy's rest stop sits on what used to be a crossroads, not just for highways, but for other things. People who died on these roads, they sometimes get confused. They think they're still traveling. I felt my mouth go dry. You're saying that woman was dead? Yes. They come through sometimes, usually during shift changes or when someone new is working. They're not dangerous if you follow the rules. But if you break them... She shuddered. The last guy who worked here before you, Tommy Fitzgerald, he broke a rule. We found him 3 days later in the parking lot. Coroner said he'd been dead for a week, but we'd been talking to him right up until the morning we found him. My legs felt weak. What are the rules? Marlene reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote them down for you. Keep this in your pocket always. I unfolded the paper. Written in Marlene's careful handwriting were 4 simple rules. 1. If a customer's card says they're dead, don't charge them. Give them what they want for free. 2. Never count the people in the parking lot. The number will always be wrong. 3. If someone asks for directions to a place that doesn't exist, tell them to head west. 4. The coffee pot in the back room stays on all night. Never turn it off. The coffee pot? I asked. Old Murphy, the original owner. He died of a heart attack in 1983, right next to that coffee pot. He still likes his coffee. As long as it's brewing, he's happy. Happy Murphy means safe Murphy. I stared at the rules. They seemed crazy, but after what I'd seen today, crazy was starting to feel normal. What happens if I break a rule? Things get confusing. The dead stop staying dead, and the living start dying. The boundaries get blurry. She stood up. But as long as you follow the rules, everything's fine. The dead customers are actually pretty nice. They usually just want snacks and directions. How long has this been going on? Marlene looked out the window at the highway. Since 1962, when Murphy first built this place. He knew what he was getting into, but he figured someone had to help these lost souls. Murphy was a good man, Rusty. He spent 21 years of his life making sure dead folks could find their way home. What was he like? Kind, patient. He used to tell me stories about the customers he'd helped over the years. There was this one woman, died in a car accident in 1971, kept coming back looking for her wedding ring. Murphy spent 3 months helping her search every inch of the highway where she'd crashed. When they finally found it, she cried for an hour and then just disappeared. Peaceful-like. Marlene smiled sadly. Murphy said that was the best part of the job. Helping people find what they'd lost. Over the next few weeks, I started to notice things I'd missed before. The way some customers moved a little too smoothly, like they were gliding. How certain people never left footprints on the wet pavement after it rained. The man who came in every Tuesday for a specific candy bar that hadn't been made since 1974. But somehow we always had it in stock. His name was Dale Pemberton, and according to the credit card machine, he died in 1978. He always wore the same blue work shirt and had calloused hands that spoke of years of manual labor. Dale would browse the candy aisle for exactly 3 minutes, pick up the same Charleston chew, and pay with a card that should have been expired for decades. "My daughter loves these," he'd say every Tuesday, going to see her after work. I started looking forward to Dale's visits. He reminded me of my own dad, who worked construction and always smelled like sawdust and determination. Dale would sometimes linger at the counter, telling me about his job at the steel mill, how proud he was of his daughter who was studying to be a nurse. "She's going to help people," he'd say, his eyes lighting up. That's what matters in this world, helping people. I never had the heart to tell him that if he'd died in 1978, his daughter would be in her 60s now, probably retired from a long career in nursing. Most importantly, I learned to trust the credit card machine. It never lied. Mrs. Evelyn Hartwell visited on a Thursday. According to the machine, she died in 1962. She bought tissues and asked about her daughter. "She's supposed to meet me here," she said, dabbing at her eyes. We were driving to my sister's house in Colorado. There was so much snow. I gave her the tissues for free and told her to have a safe trip. She thanked me and walked toward the door, then paused. "You're a good boy, Rusty. Your grandmother would be proud." I'd never mentioned my grandmother to anyone at work. My grandmother who died when I was 8, who used to smell like vanilla and old books. Then there was Benjamin Torres, a young man who couldn't have been older than 25. He came in every Friday night around 11, just as I was getting ready to leave. His card always read, "Account holder deceased, September 3rd, 1993. He bought energy drinks and asked about the road conditions. "Heading to see my girl," he'd say with a grin that lit up his whole face. "She's waiting for me in Phoenix. We're going to get married next month." Benjamin had been dead for over 30 years, but he still talked about his wedding, like it was happening tomorrow. He'd show me pictures from his wallet. A pretty girl with dark hair and bright eyes, standing next to a beat-up Chevy truck. "That's Maria," he'd say proudly. "Prettiest girl in all of Arizona. Can't believe she said yes to a guy like me." I learned to play along with their stories. It seemed cruel to remind them they were dead, especially when they were so happy planning futures that would never come. The rules worked. I followed them exactly, and nothing bad happened. The dead customers were polite, always said thank you, and never caused trouble. I started to think of them as regular customers, just from a different time. But then Marcus Delacroix started his shift. Marcus was the overnight guy, worked from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. He was older than me, maybe 35, with tattoos covering his arms and a thick Louisiana accent. He'd moved to town last month and needed the job badly. His ex-wife had taken their 2 kids to California, and he was trying to save enough money to follow them. "I'll work any shift you got," he'd told Marlene during his interview. "Day, night, weekends, holidays. I just need steady work." I liked Marcus right away. He was the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back, always asking about my girlfriend Stephanie, always bringing in homemade jambalaya to share. He'd grown up in New Orleans, lost everything in Hurricane Katrina, and had been bouncing from job to job ever since. "This seems like a good place," he said on his first training day. "Quiet, steady customers. I can handle quiet." I spent 2 weeks training him on the day shift before he moved to nights. He was a quick learner, good with customers, never complained about the boring stretches. But when I showed him the rules, his whole demeanor changed. "These rules are ridiculous," he said, reading the paper Marlene had given him. "You really believe this ghost nonsense?" "Marcus, I've seen things here that would make your hair turn white. Just follow the rules, okay?" He laughed, but it wasn't a mean laugh. "Rusty, I grew up in Louisiana. My grandmother used to tell stories about spirits and hauntings that would make Stephen King wet his pants. But this?" He waved the paper. "This is just management trying to scare employees into following procedure." "It's not a joke, Marcus. The rules are real." "Sure they are, kid. And my ex-wife is going to call me tomorrow and beg me to come back." He folded the paper and stuck it in his pocket. "Look, I'll follow your rules if it makes you feel better. But I'm not going to pretend I believe in ghosts." I should have pushed harder. Should have made him understand that this wasn't about belief, it was about survival. But Marcus was stubborn in the way that only proud men can be stubborn. He'd made up his mind, and nothing I said was going to change it. "Just follow them," I said, clocking out. "Trust me." "Sure, kid. Whatever makes you feel better." Marcus had been working nights for 2 weeks when the problems started. At first, it was small things. The coffee pot would be empty when I came in, even though Marcus swore he'd left it full. The candy display would be rearranged, with all the old-fashioned candies moved to the front. The register would have extra money in it, bills that looked like they'd been printed decades ago. "Probably just the day shift messing with me," Marcus would say when I asked about it. "You know how it is with the new guy." But I knew it wasn't the day shift. I was the day shift, and I wasn't messing with anything. I should have stayed. Should have made sure he understood how important the rules were. But I was tired, and my girlfriend Stephanie was making dinner. I left Marcus alone with his skepticism and the 4 rules. The next morning, I found him sitting in the parking lot in his car, staring at the building. His hands were shaking and his face was pale as paper. "Marcus, you okay?" He looked at me with wide eyes. "How many people work here?" "Just the 3 of us, you, me, and Marlene." "Then who was I talking to all night?" I felt that familiar cold settling in my chest. "What do you mean?" "This old guy kept coming in asking for coffee, said his name was Murphy, but there was never anyone in the parking lot. No car, no nothing. He just kept appearing and disappearing." Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "And it wasn't just him, Rusty. There were others. A woman in a yellow dress, crying about her daughter. A young guy who kept asking about road conditions. They all seemed so real. Did you keep the coffee pot on?" Marcus shook his head. "I turned it off around midnight. Seemed wasteful." My hands started shaking. "Marcus, we need to call Marlene. Right now." I tried calling her around 4 a.m. when things got really weird, but every time I dialed, I got this recording saying the number was disconnected. Then I tried calling 911, and the same thing happened. "What else did you do? Did you follow the other rules?" Marcus pulled out the paper, his hands trembling. I might have counted the cars in the parking lot. Around 2 a.m., I was bored and there were all these cars that I hadn't seen arrive. I wanted to know how many there were. "What number did you get?" 12, but I could only see 8. I closed my eyes. "Marcus, did anyone ask for directions?" "Yeah, the woman in the yellow dress. She asked how to get to some place called Millerville. I told her I'd never heard of it and gave her a Colorado map." "You were supposed to tell her to head west." "West?" "But that would have taken her into the mountains in the middle of winter. She would have frozen to death." I stared at him. "Marcus, she was already dead." But when I tried to dial her number, the phone was dead. The power was still on. The register still worked. But the phone line was completely silent. Even my cell phone showed no signal, which was impossible. We had full bars out here. "Come on," I said. "We're going inside." The rest stop felt different. The air was thicker, like trying to breathe through cotton. The fluorescent lights flickered randomly, casting moving patterns on the walls. And everything was just slightly off. The coffee station was on the wrong side of the room. The bathroom door was painted blue instead of white. And the candy aisle had products I'd never seen before. "This isn't right," Marcus whispered. "It didn't look like this last night." The coffee pot in the back room was cold. Stone cold, like it had been off for hours. But sitting next to it was a fresh cup of coffee, still steaming. The coffee was black, and it smelled like chicory and old age. "I didn't make that," Marcus whispered. That's when we heard the footsteps upstairs. Murphy's rest stop was a single-story building. There was no upstairs. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. Someone was walking back and forth above us like they were pacing. The ceiling creaked with each step, and dust fell like snow. "Marcus," I said quietly, "did you break any other rules?" He pulled out the paper, his hands shaking. I might have counted the cars in the parking lot. Around 2 a.m., I was bored. "What number did you get?" 12, but I could only see 8. The footsteps stopped. The building went completely silent. Then we heard Murphy's voice. It came from everywhere and nowhere, like it was coming through the walls themselves. "Boys," he said, and his voice was like coffee grounds and cigarettes. "We need to talk." Murphy appeared in the doorway to the back room, and he looked exactly like I'd imagined. Short and round, with thin white hair and suspenders holding up worn work pants. His eyes were kind but tired, the eyes of someone who'd been dealing with problems for a very long time. "Marcus," he said, looking directly at the overnight worker. "You've caused quite a stir." Marcus couldn't speak. He just stood there, mouth open, staring at a dead man who'd been dead for 42 years. "Rusty," Murphy continued, "you've been doing good work, following the rules, treating my customers with respect. I appreciate that." "Thank you, sir," I managed. Murphy walked over to the coffee pot and poured himself a cup from the pot that had been empty seconds before. The coffee smelled rich and strong. "The rules exist for a reason," he said, taking a sip. "This place, it's special. Always has been. Even before I built the rest stop, people said this crossroads was different. Native tribes used to leave offerings here. Settlers reported strange things. Good things, mind you, but strange." He gestured around the room. "When I bought this land in 1962, I knew what I was getting into. The dead have always passed through here. My job was to make sure they could do it safely, without bothering the living too much." "But you died," Marcus said, finally finding his voice. "I did. Heart attack right here in this room. But dying doesn't mean leaving, son. Someone has to keep watch. Someone has to make sure the rules are followed." Murphy finished his coffee and set the cup down. "The problem is, when the rules get broken, the boundaries get weak. The dead start staying longer than they should. The living start seeing things they shouldn't see. And eventually the two groups start mixing in ways that aren't healthy for anyone." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Show them," Murphy said to someone behind us. We turned around, and there was the woman in the yellow dress, Mrs. Hartwell. But she looked different now, translucent, like she was made of mist. "I've been trying to leave," she said sadly, "but I can't find the way. The roads keep changing." "She's been here for 3 weeks," Murphy explained. "Ever since Marcus started working. The rules keep her tethered to this place now. She can't move on." More people started appearing. The man who bought the old candy bars, a teenage girl in a Letterman jacket, a truck driver with grease on his hands, all of them translucent, all of them looking lost and confused. "They're stuck," Murphy said, "and more keep coming every night. Pretty soon this place is going to be overrun with spirits who can't find their way home." "What can we do?" I asked. Murphy looked at Marcus. "The rules need to be reset. The boundaries need to be made clear again. But it requires a sacrifice from the person who broke them." Marcus stepped backward. "What kind of sacrifice?" "Nothing dramatic," Murphy said quickly. "But you need to stay here for 1 full night, alone, and personally help each of these spirits find their way. You need to listen to their stories, understand why they're stuck, and help them let go." "That's it?" "That's it. But Marcus, you need to understand. Some of these spirits have been dead for decades. Their stories, they're not always pleasant, and you'll be alone with them all night. No leaving, no calling for help. Just you and them until sunrise." I looked at Marcus. He was pale, but he was nodding. "It's my fault," he said. "I should have listened to the rules." "Good man," Murphy said. "We'll start tonight." As the sun set, I helped Marcus prepare. We made fresh coffee, restocked the shelves, and made sure everything was clean. The dead customers would be coming, and Murphy wanted them to feel welcome. "What if I can't help them?" Marcus asked, his voice tight with worry. "You will," Murphy said confidently. "The dead don't need much, son. They just need someone to listen, someone to care about their stories." "I'll be okay," Marcus told me as I got ready to leave. "It's just 1 night." "Are you sure? I could stay and help." "No," Murphy said, appearing beside us. "This is something he needs to do alone. But don't worry, Rusty. I'll be here to make sure things don't get out of hand." I wanted to stay, but I knew Murphy was right. This was Marcus's responsibility, his chance to fix what he'd broken. Still, as I walked to my car, I felt like I was abandoning him. I drove home, but I couldn't sleep. Stephanie made dinner, and we watched a movie, but I kept thinking about Marcus alone in the rest stop with all those spirits. Around 10 p.m., I gave up pretending to be normal. "I have to go check on him," I told Stephanie. "It's not your shift, Rusty. You need to learn to let go." "You don't understand. Marcus is dealing with something that could kill him." Stephanie sighed. "Fine, but you're telling me the whole story when you get back." I drove back to the rest stop, and what I saw made me pull over to the side of the road. The parking lot was full of cars. Not just full, overflowing. There were cars parked in every space, cars parked in the grass, cars parked along the highway shoulder. Old cars, new cars, cars that looked like they were from different decades. A 1962 Buick sat next to a 1987 Honda, which sat next to a 1975 Chevy pickup. I counted them without thinking, then remembered the rule. I forced myself to look away, but not before I'd reached 37 vehicles. The parking lot only had space for 20. Through the windows, I could see Marcus talking to someone I couldn't see. He was nodding, listening intently. Sometimes he wrote something down on a piece of paper. Sometimes he just sat quietly while the invisible person talked. At midnight, I saw him talking to a woman in a yellow dress, Mrs. Hartwell. She was crying, and Marcus was handing her tissues. He listened to her for what felt like hours, occasionally nodding or asking questions I couldn't hear. When she finally stopped crying, Marcus stood up and walked her to the door. He pointed west, toward the mountains, and she smiled. She hugged him. I could see Marcus's arms around something that wasn't there, and then she was gone. At 1 a.m., it was Dale Pemberton. I could tell because Marcus was holding a Charleston chew, and he was talking animatedly about someone's daughter. Dale seemed excited, happy even. After about an hour, he shook Marcus's hand and walked toward the door. But before he left, he turned back and said something that made Marcus laugh. At 2 a.m., it was Benjamin Torres. I knew it was him because Marcus was looking at pictures, nodding appreciatively. Benjamin was probably telling him about Maria, about their upcoming wedding. Marcus listened patiently, asked questions, and eventually Benjamin seemed satisfied. He put his pictures away and headed for the door, but not before giving Marcus a hearty pat on the back. At 3 a.m., I saw Marcus crying. Not scared crying, but the kind of tears you shed when you hear something heartbreaking. He was talking to someone small, a child maybe, gesturing with his hands, and then he reached out like he was hugging someone very small. This went on all night. Customer after customer, story after story. Marcus never looked tired, never looked impatient. He treated each spirit with the same respect and kindness he'd shown to living customers. At 4 a.m., an old man in work clothes appeared. Murphy. But this time, I could see him clearly through the window. He looked solid, real, like any living person. He and Marcus sat together at the counter, talking quietly. Murphy was smiling, and Marcus was nodding. After about an hour, Murphy stood up and shook Marcus's hand. Then he walked toward the back room, toward the coffee pot. But before he disappeared, he turned back and saluted Marcus. A formal, respectful salute. At 5 a.m., the cars in the parking lot started to disappear. Not driving away, just fading out one by one. The 1962 Buick flickered and vanished. The 1987 Honda dissolved like mist. The 1975 Chevy pickup shimmered and was gone. The yellow dress woman was the last to go. I saw her clearly for just a moment, solid and real, and she was smiling. She waved at the window, and then she was gone. When the sun came up, I went inside. Marcus was sitting behind the counter, looking exhausted but peaceful. There was something different about him, something calmer. "How did it go?" I asked. "Hard," he said. "But good." Each one of them had something they needed to say, something they needed someone to hear before they could let go. "What kind of things?" Mrs. Hartwell wanted me to know that her daughter grew up to be a teacher, just like she'd dreamed. But more than that, she wanted to know that her daughter had been happy, that she'd gotten married, had kids of her own, lived a full life. Marcus wiped his eyes. I couldn't tell her those things, obviously. But somehow, just having someone listen was enough. She told me about the accident, about how scared she'd been, about how she'd been waiting here for 63 years for someone to care about her story. What about Dale? Dale wanted to talk about his daughter, how proud he was of her, how she'd always been the smartest kid in her class. He showed me pictures from his wallet, school photos, graduation pictures, her first day of nursing school. He'd been carrying those pictures for 47 years. Marcus smiled through his tears. He also wanted to know about the Charleston Chews. Turns out they discontinued them in 1982, but they were his daughter's favorite candy. He'd been buying them every Tuesday for decades, hoping to surprise her when she finally came to visit. And Benjamin? Benjamin was the hardest one. He'd been dead for 32 years, but he still thought he was going to Phoenix to marry Maria. He showed me pictures of her, told me about their plans, about the little house they were going to buy. Marcus paused. I had to find a way to help him understand, without breaking his spirit. So I asked him what he loved most about Maria, and he went on for hours about her kindness, her laugh, her dreams of becoming a teacher. By the end, he realized that what he loved most was the memory of her, not the future they'd planned. What about the child? Little Amy Peterson. She died in a car accident in 1992, only 7 years old. She'd been looking for her mommy for 33 years. Marcus's voice broke. She was so scared, so confused. She didn't understand why her mommy hadn't come to get her. What did you tell her? I told her that her mommy was waiting for her, but not here. I told her that her mommy was somewhere safe and warm, and that all she had to do was follow the light. She asked me if I was sure, and I promised her I was. Marcus smiled. You know what she said before she left? She said, "Thank you for helping me find my way home." 7 years old, and she thanked me for helping her. And Murphy? Murphy was different. He wasn't stuck like the others. He'd been choosing to stay, making sure the lost souls found their way home. But he told me something important. He said that the rules aren't just about keeping the dead away from the living. They're about respect. Marcus looked at me seriously. Every person who comes through here, living or dead, has a story. They deserve to be treated with dignity, to be heard, to be helped. That's what the rules are really about. So what happens now? Now we do our jobs. We follow the rules. We help people. And we remember that everyone has a story worth hearing. Murphy appeared looking satisfied. The boundaries are clear again. The rules are reset. Everyone who was stuck has found their way home. And you? I asked Murphy. Are you stuck here too? He smiled. I'm not stuck, son. I'm choosing to stay. Someone needs to keep watch, and I like this place. I like helping people, even if they happen to be dead. But don't you want to move on? Don't you have family waiting for you? Murphy's expression grew soft. My wife Martha passed in 1995. My son Robert in 2003. They're not waiting for me, Rusty. They're at peace. But these lost souls, they need someone to help them find their way. As long as there are people getting lost on these highways, I'll be here to help them find their way home. Marcus and I both stayed working at Murphy's rest stop. We never broke the rules again, and we made sure that any new employees understood how important they were. The dead customers still came through, but now they came and went naturally. They bought their snacks, asked for directions, and moved on to wherever they were supposed to be. Some of them were sad, some were happy, but all of them were just people trying to get home. Marcus became like a big brother to me. He taught me about life, about loss, about the importance of listening to people's stories. He told me about his kids in California, about how he was saving money to visit them, about how much he missed being a father. "This job taught me something important," he said one evening as we were switching shifts. "Everyone's got a story, and every story matters. Doesn't matter if they're alive or dead, rich or poor, young or old. Everyone deserves to be heard." I learned their stories over time. The businessman who died in a car accident in 1985 always bought the same newspaper and asked about his stocks. His name was Richard Kellerman, and he'd been on his way to his daughter's wedding when he crashed. He still wore his wedding ring, still carried the speech he'd planned to give at the reception. The old woman who'd passed away in 1967 always bought postcards and asked if we had stamps. Her name was Dorothy Wilkins, and she'd been traveling to see her first grandchild when her heart gave out. She still carried the baby blanket she'd knitted, still talked about how excited she was to meet little Sarah. The little boy who died in 1992 always wanted candy and asked if we'd seen his mommy. His name was Tommy Morrison, and he'd been in the car with his mother when they'd crashed during a snowstorm. He still carried his favorite toy car, still believed his mommy was just running late. Each of them had a story, and each story mattered. Murphy taught me that the rules weren't just about keeping the dead away from the living. They were about treating everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of whether they were alive or dead. The rules were about kindness. 6 months later, Marlene promoted me to assistant manager. She said I had a good understanding of customer service. "You treat everyone the same," she said. "Living or dead, you make them feel welcome. That's what this job is really about." She was right. Whether someone was alive or dead, whether they were driving cross-country or just passing through from another world, everyone deserved to be treated with respect. Everyone deserved to have their story heard. Marcus eventually saved enough money to visit his kids in California. He was gone for 2 weeks, and when he came back, he was different. Happier, more at peace. "They're good kids," he told me. "My ex-wife, she's done a good job raising them. They don't hate me like I thought they would." "Are you going to move out there?" "Maybe someday, but not yet. This place needs me, and I need it. I'm learning things here that I can't learn anywhere else." We hired Sarah Martinez as our part-time employee. She was a college student studying psychology, and she took to the rules immediately. "It makes sense," she said after her first encounter with a dead customer. "People need closure, whether they're alive or dead. They need someone to witness their story." Sarah was particularly good with the child spirits. She had a natural way with kids, living or dead. Tommy Morrison took to her immediately, and she always made sure to have his favorite candy in stock. "He's been 7 years old for 33 years, she told me. "Can you imagine? Never growing up, never moving on, just stuck in that moment of confusion and fear." "But he's not stuck anymore," I pointed out. "He comes and goes as he pleases. That's different. Now he has a choice. Before, he was trapped. Now he's free." I still work at Murphy's rest stop. Marcus works the overnight shift, and we have Sarah on weekends. We've had a few other employees over the years, but they never last long. Not everyone can handle the dead customers, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant for this job. The coffee pot still brews all night. The dead customers still come and go. And Murphy still makes his rounds, making sure everyone feels welcome. Sometimes, late at night when I'm closing up, I see him standing in the parking lot, watching the highway. He waves at the passing cars, and sometimes the cars wave back. He's helping people find their way home, one traveler at a time. Marcus and I have become like family. We look out for each other, share stories, and make sure the rules are followed. We've learned that the dead aren't scary. They're just people who need help, just like the living. Last month, a new customer came in. A young woman, maybe 25, with sad eyes and a nervous smile. Her card read, "Account holder deceased, June 23, 2025. She'd only been dead for 3 weeks. "I'm looking for my brother," she said. "He's supposed to meet me here." I gave her what she needed for free and told her to have a safe trip. She thanked me and started to leave, then paused at the door. "Is it always this confusing?" she asked. "Being dead?" "Only at first," I said. "It gets easier." She smiled, and for a moment she looked peaceful. "Thank you. That's what we do at Murphy's Rest Stop. We help people find their way home. The rules are simple, but they work. They keep the boundaries clear, the dead moving, and the living safe. Most importantly, they remind us that everyone has a story worth hearing, and everyone deserves to be treated with kindness. Even the dead ones, especially the dead ones."